Hello.
Hi.
We're here today to finally do the Crow 2024 review. We've been getting a lot of messages asking us to review this movie and we weren't sure if we should do it or not. I know a lot of people are going to be mad, but how do you know it's bad without seeing it?
What's the first thing you liked about me?
Okay, the trailer was pretty bad, but we still had to give it a chance. We did it for you, you know? We did it so you don't have to go see it.
And we really held our hopes very, very high. Up until the first sets of reviews came out, and this movie got panned by pretty much every single critic who saw it. We decided to take one for the team, go check out the movie despite the bad reviews we've seen, and give you all our opinion on The Crow 2024. Before we get into the review, if anyone notices our beautiful t-shirts here, these are from Little Scorpion Tees. I'll put the link in the description and a thing here on the screen. They have a lot of really cool designs.
Yeah, they have all my favorite movies. T-shirts that you can't usually find, they supply them, so make sure to go and check them out. Also want to shout out Magic Markings for our face markings here that we're wearing, and we will be wearing these all the time because they are honestly so cool, so easy, so fast. Just lump them on your face and you're done.
They're so easy to use, they're reusable, and they have saved us both so much time on makeup looks since we started using them. So a link to Magic Markings is also down in the description below. So we went to see the movie on opening night here in Ireland, the very first day that the movie was out, and we went to see it on a Friday night, opening weekend, for a big blockbuster movie that's been waiting now over a decade for it to be made. The queues were out the door, such a massive struggle to get tickets, except for the fact that we turned up there and it was us and 4 other people at the evening screening on a Friday night on opening day. And I'm not exaggerating here, there were 6 of us total.
Also, I would like to point out the fact that when we were looking for tickets to book this, they did in fact use the old Crow poster. And when you click it, it shows you the new Crow trailer. First of all, let's respect the Crow and not call it the Crow and just the Crow. Anytime I was looking up to try and find out anything about the movie or trying to book it, I kept getting the old Crow stuff. This is why they should not have called it the Crow. I did also go in with some notes. I ran past the McDonald's and ran in and got some paper, minion muddle, to write some notes. So I will be using these as a pinpoint to talk about things today.
Very important information on here. Really important notes that you had to jot down in the moment in case you forgot them. Like The Crow. Just for the record, this is going to be a spoilery kind of review. So if you do want to see the movie for yourself, then be aware we are going to talk about some major plot points in it.
If you've already seen the movie, the original movie, The Crow, then you will know what happens. You know, yes, there's some changes, I guess, but overall, it's the same storyline. So I don't think there should be spoilers unless you've never seen any of these movies before. And if you haven't seen any of these movies before, then why are you here and why are you not watching the original Crow? Okay, so first of all, I want to complain. I want to speak to the manager. I want to go full Karen here. Was it blurry? Did it look bad to everyone else? It looked like when your camera's out of focus, or like if you had like something on the lens of your camera and you're trying to take a picture and you just want to wipe it clean. And I just kept being like to Conor, is this me? Am I the problem? But then randomly it would go in focus. So I was like, right, maybe this is not just me. Maybe this is the thing that's happening.
So this seemed to be an aesthetic choice by the director, and I understand where they were coming from in this. The entire like first half of the movie is Eric and Shelley's love story. It's got a very hazy, like blurry, dreamlike-y look. The background is always full of bokeh. There's always just a very like small bit of the frame in focus.
Me a headache.
At the halfway point during the movie, when Eric and Shelley, you know, the movie then strikes into a different look and feel. The entire first half of the movie seems to take place in daylight to facilitate this effect. Everything is always like really bright and they're wearing like kind of pastels and things like that. And then the latter half of the movie takes place probably nearly entirely at nighttime. It's all very dark. I feel the problem is that they didn't fully go in either direction. If the whole first half of the movie had have been super dreamlike, oversaturated, and it was all like a Wes Anderson movie, and then when you get into the second half of the movie you go the full whole hog like the original Crow movie, where it's basically drained entirely of colour and all you have is just like black, white and splotches of red. But it seemed like they were afraid to commit to either aesthetic and then kind of left it in the middle ground of both, which to me, and very much so to you, was just more irritating than anything else.
Speaking of how half the movie was in the dreamlike type of vision, that brings us to the point that people want to see more of Shelley, because we didn't get to see a lot of Shelley in the original movie. So you do get to see that. People have said there didn't seem to be a lot of chemistry between the two actors together. They weren't selling the love. They did talk about it in an interview where they said they actually didn't meet until they were on set. So I think that became very clear. The relationship was really kind of awkward and weird. I didn't mind that too much because I'm just so aware that it can be like that and people can love each other and still be kind of awkward and be like, hey, I like your tattoo. I have tattoos. But it's a movie and it's about love. You know, sell the love, you know, and it didn't sell. I don't
Anything.
think. It wasn't selling.
It was on sale and no one bought it.
People complained that that part went on too long and stuff like that, so you'd think they would have sold it to us with the time that they had, but they didn't.
There was 10 times more chemistry between Eric and Shelley in the 1994 movie in less than 5 minutes of screen time than Bill Skarsgård and FKA Twigs managed to give us in literally nearly 40 minutes of screen time in this movie. And like Lynn says, you would think devoting so much of the movie to their relationship would make it all the more heartbreaking when the event happens, but if anything, it just made me be like, they knew each other about 2 to 3 weeks in the duration of the movie, and every interaction they had with each other was either incredibly awkward or they were doing drugs, which really isn't selling the whole like true love thing about their whole relationship if 70% of the relationship that we see on screen is the two of them just taking drugs together.
They're bad for each other,
Yeah.
so you're not really rooting for their love, like they were a bad influence.
I was kind of hoping from the trailer that we saw scenes of them in rehab together and then we see scenes of them afterwards, and I was kind of hoping the movie would try push the narrative that they were both like kind of ex-addicts and then they
That
get
too.
together and they become sober and then, you know, it happens, because that would
that would
give-
hurt a lot more.
Oh, they finally got their lives together, they finally pushed past all their trauma, they're happy, they're in love, and then this tragic event happens. And on this topic, because we're getting up to the point in the movie now where Eric and Shelley are separated from their lives, I was really rooting for Bill Skarsgård as Eric. I didn't love his look when we saw him in the trailer, but he's a really good character actor and I thought maybe we'd get more out of him. And more importantly, FKA Twigs seemed like an edgy take on Shelley, and once we saw that we were getting more backstory on Shelley, I thought, oh, we're gonna get like a really cool interpretation of Shelley because she was kind of robbed of any real screen time or presence in the original. But unfortunately, neither of them really delivered on that front. Eric was a very mopey character. He mumbled through the entire movie.
We didn't understand him, like he just kept changing his accent. It was like the Joker, but then it was like
New Yorker.
New York. It was so strange. Like I don't know what he was thinking. It was given emo Spider-Man.
Right.
We want Goth King, not emo Spider-Man. We didn't actually talk about the very first scene that you see. It's so random. We thought we were in the wrong movie. It was like him on a horse, like.
Despite Bill Skarsgård's attempt to do his best Little Peep as Batman impression, it was passable. However, FKA Twigs' performance as Shelley did nothing but irritate me throughout the entire movie. The definition of go girl, you give us nothing.
I just want to jump in and say that I've been watching interviews with Twigs. I think she's really cool. Like, she also listens to Boy Harsher, which that was a cool shout out for them. She's actually very, very interesting. It's sad that that didn't come out in the movie.
Every interaction between the two of them is just incredibly awkward. The entire movie, I kept waiting for them to have some like big moment between each other, and Shelley's response to pretty much anything that Eric said would be like 1 or 2 word answers while they just gave dead fish eyes to the camera. It actually just kind of irritated me more and more as the movie went on, which is not what you want in a movie where when their death is meant to be this kind of tragic thing that you're upset about. Instead, you're just glad that they're gonna now have less screen time, and you're not even upset that it happened and can't even root for Eric because their relationship just seemed so 2D the entire time. I'm meant to be brokenhearted here for them.
Also, get those names out of your mouth, not to be dramatic. Did you really have to call them Eric and Shelley? Talking about them like this just seems wrong.
This movie could have been salvaged massively if they had have just changed the name to like The Crow, whatever suffix of the storylines from the books that they wanted to use.
Crow on drugs.
After a reaction video so many people mentioned about The Crow Wild Justice and Michael Corby being covered in tattoos and stuff like that, they could have just at least used those names for this storyline and called it The Crow Wild Justice, and I think the reviews and opinions about this movie would have been so much better and more open-minded. The thing that this movie does differently to 1994 is it actually gives us a bit more Crow lore. Eric wakes up in the afterlife and meets his sort of spirit guide, the one who sets him up to come back to life.
I have wrote down here, needs a man to tell him the original quote from The Crow. Didn't like that it was this man using the original quote from The Crow, but I know it's like from the comic. Who is this man? Why is he telling us this beautiful quote? I don't know who the man was. Who is he?
And another thing that bothered me about this is just the whole aesthetic of that place being like a random industrial like train station. They had an opportunity to make this like purgatory or in-between world like very interesting or unusual, and they do make a joke about it in the movie. He talks about how the higher powers didn't really put much effort into what this place looks like because no one's really meant to be there, but it just feels like a bit of a cop-out for the fact that they didn't do anything really cool or interesting with this kind of purgatory area. It was just a random like empty train depot in an industrial estate.
It's like, who's this man? Why are they in a train station?
So at this point he gives Eric the opportunity to come back to life and also, more importantly, save Shelley, which is a new element to this movie that isn't present in the original. Apparently Shelley's soul is destined for hell. The person who killed her made some kind of deal with the devil that he can live forever as long as he sends innocent souls to hell. And I do think that's cool to like evenly match Eric and the villain. Bless Danny Houston, he did his best in this role. He was my favorite character in the movie. I think he delivered the best lines in the movie, and his performance out of everyone was the best performance, but they really just didn't flesh out his character enough to really make him like an iconic movie villain.
No.
So Eric gets to come back to life at this point and avenge Shelley's death, and we get more like Crow lore. As long as his love remains pure, then he will be invincible. What precedes is the latter half of the movie that we spoke about earlier, where the entire kind of color palette of the movie drops to this very dark, gloomy, raining the entire time. The whole thing is very blue. It's all very fast-paced action, kind of like John Wick style kind of movie, which arguably is maybe the best part of this movie, is getting to see all these kind of like action scenes and stuff. The gore was really cool. The only thing that was unfortunate about it was it all felt like very bad rehashes of the 1994 movie. There was lots of like lines from the original movie that they had like updated and changed for this one, but delivered them really flatly and badly. They were rewritten in really awkwardly phrased ways. So the entire time your hopes are just going up that this movie is going to improve, without realizing that this is the best that it's going to get at any single point.
Also, Conor was saying about the part where it's dark and raining and he's upset and he's walking in the rain, and a Goth song comes on and we're like, oh cool, nice, some Goth music. I wasn't sure who it was at first. It kind of sounded a bit like Vision Video to me, but it was a band called Traitors, who I actually do know, but I didn't know this song. So we were like, okay, cool, Goth music. Whoa, Division was given emo and he's given emo, and the whole thing was very emo. So it was kind of like, stop trying to win us over with the Goth music, because it almost worked, but it's not going to work. They did pick some really good songs, but I actually don't think they suited the movie at all, and they probably should have went with some like emo or like emo rap type of music.
That is one very positive thing I can say about the movie, is that the soundtrack, they did actually make some pretty good choices. They had Joy Division in there, Gary Newman in there, as Lynn said, Traitors in there, which is great because the original comic is so influenced by The Cure and Joy Division, so it was great to see that in there. It just felt kind of just trying to take something so that people can't complain that they disregarded the source material entirely.
Another thing I would like to complain about is when I seen the first Crow fly up and land on a very gothic looking building close to the camera, and I was like, that is the most CGI looking crow I've ever seen. I know if I look back to the Crow movie, people are gonna be like, are you for real? Those birds maybe don't look that real, but in my mind they do, and that was a very long time ago, so they did the best they could at the time. But now the CGI crows for the most part looked so fake, especially up close, and I just don't like the CGI look. And it's kind of like, you can definitely have some real looking crows rather than this weird CGI looking thing.
With a movie of this budget, of this scope, and it is literally about crows, it's called The Crow, and there are hundreds of crows throughout this film. The one thing that you should be getting right CGI wise is the crows. I feel like the CGI budget mostly went on the Wolverine style healing wounds that Eric had in this movie.
Really cool.
But they should have spent maybe a little more time working on those CGI crows. So at this point, Eric finds out more about Shelley's past, and he finds out that maybe Shelley's past isn't as clean cut as he thought. His faith and love in Shelley falters slightly, and as we heard earlier in the movie, if his love didn't remain pure the entire time, he'd no longer be invincible. So Eric ends up actually dying for a second time, and once he ends up back in the purgatory world again, he's told that Shelley's soul is going to hell and there's nothing he can do now to save her. He offers up his soul in exchange for Shelley. At this point, he gets sent back for a second time, and his entire kind of demeanor and character changes into a much darker version of what it was earlier.
A change has been made. His acting skills, his eyes, how he looked, how he walked, how he moved. I was like, whoa, this is cool. And I know a lot of people were like, really like, whoa, he got really hot all of a sudden as well. The kills were really cool. All of his deaths were really cool. Like, I was definitely impressed with like all of the times when he was hurt and stuff like that. Like, that was all great. Like, it just changed at the end, and I understand why, and maybe they made it so bad to have such a big drastic change when he did like sell his soul.
And this brings us to the penultimate scene in the movie, which is, you saw in the trailer, this big showdown in the opera house, which admittedly is a very, very cool scene. The action and gore in it was incredible.
When he came out after like unaliving 2 people and had their heads, and I was like, please walk out and throw them into the crowd, and he did it, and I was like, so good.
Those 5 minutes of the movie alone are honestly fantastic and feel like they've been plucked from a much better movie than this one is.
A lot of people have said that in reviews.
But just as your hopes are at their highest and wow, this movie's actually making a turnaround, it's actually turning into a good movie, the movie hits us with the most anticlimactic, underwhelming showdown of recent cinema history. Danny Houston's character was built up as this character who's been alive for maybe hundreds of years. He's got this superpower where he can whisper into people's ears and mind control them and bring out the darkest depths of their heart, which leaves you this really cool opportunity to have him control Eric and make Eric commit atrocious acts on innocent people before his love for Shelley purifying his heart, giving him back control, and then having this really cool epiphany. But instead what they gave us was like a 2.5 minute long struggle between him and Danny Houston's character on the floor of a bedroom where they kind of just wrestled each other.
I'm not gonna lie, I fell asleep.
Yeah.
I fell asleep.
In the climax of the movie, there's no like big epic showdown on a church roof. Instead, and I shit you not, Eric walks into his bedroom and he's sat there brushing his hair in a mirror, and then the two of them wrestle on the ground. I'm not joking, that's actually what happens in the movie. Both of them get transported into the purgatory world, and Eric finishes off Danny Houston's character by pushing him into a small puddle of water. I'm not lying.
Black water though.
No way this was how people wanted this movie to end. There are no way several people greenlit this as the fantastic idea for the climax of this movie.
So before we finish this up and give it the stars or no stars that this movie deserves, I just want to say that I do feel really bad for like trashing all over this movie. Like, I never really like to do that because I like to respect people's visions, and I understand like hard work was put into this, and I know that the actors and everyone involved like put in a lot of hard work, so I do feel really bad, but at the same time like it's really bad. Like, I give everybody the benefit of the doubt, but a lot of stuff went wrong.
At the end of the day, this movie really needed like a total overhaul, a complete fresh look, and instead I think we got a Frankenstein's monster of all these people's ideas that have been put into it over the past 10 years, and unfortunately the end product is just kind of wholly underwhelming. So let's give our opinion on what this movie deserves out of 10 in 3, 2, 1, 5. You know,
I originally gave it a 6, but then after sitting here and talking about it, I realised that it's actually more of a 3 or a 4. But after seeing it, I gave it a 6 because I did like the end and stuff. But thinking of it as like being related to The Crow, I would give it actually a 2.
If this was a standalone Crow movie that didn't use Eric and Shelley's names, and it was another storyline from the comic books, and we just viewed this as like a Crow story, I would give this a 6, maybe a 6.5. It is definitely the second best Crow movie that exists. It's honestly not that bad. The good qualities of this movie are very, very good. As we said earlier, the music is pretty great, but unfortunately there isn't enough of it. The story and the bad points of this movie are really bad. Like, the lows of this movie are super, super low. So overall, it brings the score down. And then on top of that, comparing it to the original Crow movie, it just brings it lower and lower.
You called it The Crow and you stole their name, so I give you a 1.
If you're a fan of the franchise, if you like the comic books, if you're into these kind of movies, go see it, or wait till it's streaming somewhere and then watch it online. If you go into it with an open mind and you're not judging it as like that new version of The Crow, I think there are definitely things there that you'll enjoy. But if you're like a die-hard Crow 1994 fan and you're expecting something along those lines, then you're going to leave the experience very, very disappointed. So up to you to decide. Are you going to go check it out? Let us know in the comment section down below. Did you already see the movie? Then let us know down below what you think. Do you think it's a pile of hot garbage and it's not worth your time? Or are you in the same camp as us and think that it's actually semi-okay and it's at least somewhat watchable, if not for the opera scene alone? If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like. If you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing as it helps us out a lot. As always, massive shout out to our members over on Patreon. If you want to support the channel, there is a link in the description down below. You will get early access to videos, behind the scenes, blooper reels, and access to our copyright-free music library, along with supporting us to help to continue make videos like this. So if you do want access to all of that and help support the channel, the link, as I said, is in the description down below. And as always, until next time, see you in your nightmares.